Okay, guys, so here we have the US national debt absolutely exploding. As you can see, 221 years. They managed to rack up 12 trillion in debt. A few more years after that, 12 years after that, they managed to rack up 15 trillion of debt. And in just 4 years, they have managed to rack up another 12 trillion. So 221 years versus 4 years. Um, let's see where it's going. Oh, look at that. Would you believe it? Both candidates' plans are for even more debt. So, in the medium case scenario, we have Kamala with 3.5 trillion of extra debt, and in Trump at 7.5 trillion. So, Trump much higher. This is completely correct with Trump's first presidency, where he racked up the highest peacetime deficit in history, only to be followed by Biden this term, who even blew that one out of the water. And then you got him basically going to do the same thing. He will do the same thing. I really want him to win. He's going to get rid of woke nonsense. He's going to get rid of, going to reduce illegal immigration. Of course, we want him to win and get out the stupid wars in Ukraine and destroy Hamas. I'm very happy for that. But regarding debt and economics, he was an absolute disaster. He does follow on Reagan's footsteps. The one he pins himself on. Reagan was also someone who abandoned any fiscal restriction and went crazy. So there's no difference there. And Trump will do the same again. 7.5 trillion, and that's in a medium case scenario, by the way. In a crazy case scenario, Trump is on 15 trillion worth of new debt would be added. So let's see how bad that is regarding interest. So this is the interest payments on debt from Fred, the US government website. As you can see, they're currently paying 1.1 trillion a year just on interest. So that would be about 75% of the UK GDP. The US is just spending on interest payments. So they can't pay that. So what have they done? They started cutting interest rates, guys. You think that cut from 5.25 to 4.75 was just, random? No, they have to cut these interest rates because they can't pay for it. And then they're saying, oh, we're going to go up to 3%. There's no way their steady state is 3%. It's going back down to zero. Now, I was quite, how would I say? I was a bit shocked when they initially raised the interest rate so high and so quickly. I was quite, I was shocked. Definitely caught me off guard because I thought there's no way they can pay for this. So the way they've done this, and as you can see here, I'm going to have to try and explain it, is what they did is they shifted their payments. So this is a 20-year bond, and what they did is during low interest rate years, so from 2008 till 2020, you can see they load up on 20-year bonds. Why? Because it's 0% they're paying. They're giving you 0% or 1% on a 20-year bond. They lock that in. They tell you, here you go, we'll pay you 1% for 20 years. And for 12 years they did that. And as you can see, it increases the amount of 20-year bonds they issued. But then when they actually have to pay higher interest rates, so recently, so you can go 2021 to 2024, they've reduced that. Obviously, they don't want to pay, that's why it went down. They're not issuing those bonds. They don't want to issue those bonds because they don't want to lock it in at 5%. So those have been not issued very much. And that's the kind of game they've been playing all along to try and do this. But now let's look at the overall debt in the US. So the overall debt, as you can see, is made up of bills, bonds, and short-term treasury. So short-term is a very, very short term, like days. But the majority is bills. So we've got bonds there, as we said, 10-year, 20-year, whatever. Bills is under 1 year, right? But then the rest is just between basically 1 to like 5 years. That is the majority of their debt. So they were riding high. That's why they could ride high very nicely from 2022 till now, because they were all paying. The majority of them, as you can see, are bonds, 20% and 52% locked in at 0% essentially, or 1%. But now they're coming for They have to be recycled, and you're recycling them and you're reissuing them, at 5%. Well, that's why the interest rate payments have gone up through the roof. They cannot keep issuing those at those amounts. So they have to crash that interest rate all the way back down to 0%, just like Japan has done for 20, 30 years, because they are incapable of paying higher interest rates. That is where the US is going. The US is going back to ZIRP, zero interest rate payments. They're going back to 1% maybe, and that's it. That's where they're going. Now, what does that cause? That obviously causes massive inflation, right? Because that's what happens when you do this. No one wants to buy your bonds, essentially, right? No one's going to pay one. No one's going to accept 1% when your inflation is, let's say, 3%. Okay, no one's going to accept 1%. So who's the only buyers? It's the Federal Reserve themselves, just like in Japan, where 90% of Japanese debt is owned by their central bank. That's who owns it. No one's stupid enough to buy it. So therefore, in America, it will also be the right hand buying it from the left hand. It's a complete con game. And that is the way they will do it. So only the Fed will be the main buyers. As we know, foreign investors have been abandoned the US Treasury market for years. China is cutting, Japan is cutting, no one else is buying, no big buyers. So everyone has just ditched the US government debt. So it's only really the US institutions that are forced to buy it, and the US themselves. So this is where we're going. We're going for very low ZIRP interest rates. We're going for rampant inflation, because that's what happens when you're going to cut that interest rate. So people will borrow more and invest more. Obviously, they'll start buying lots of assets on the cheap. So houses, 1 million, I don't know. Even if it was 100,000 last year, I'm borrowing at 0%. What do I care? Buy it 1 million, I'll sell it for 2 million. So assets will go through the roof. None of that is measured by the CPI measurement. And so could even not see it. You'll see your inflation at 2% maybe for the rest forever. Doesn't mean there's not inflation, because the assets will go off the scale. The S&P will go off the scale. Gold will go off the scale. Everything will go mental. So that is the way they're going to go for. They're going to go for asset inflation. Sorry, I'll make it more clear. They'll go for asset inflation, bankrupting everyone, keeping the rich richer, not allowing the banks to go bankrupt, and that's it.